đó, đó thì ok.
Welcome everybody online. I wanted to say we will be getting started here in just a few minutes. This is not going to be interactive tonight virtually, so please make sure you stay muted and get ready to enjoy the program. Hello, Sharon. How are you?
Yeah, that's where I get that. Which is down. Not as.
Can someone let me know if you can hear me? I just want to test the audio.
I can hear you. This is Julia.
Thanks, Julia. And I was planning to see you in person since we're virtually, how video call before the end of the week.
Okay. Make sure everybody's muted. I can still hear people chatting.
All right, yeah, I see a couple people here, about to mute everybody.
Okay.
It's the, well, no, she.
Submit out there, sure, you should have something. You should have.
We're gonna start heading inside because the candidate is coming in. I know you want to see the candidate, but you will have time to see her in a bit when she comes in. So she is coming, there's her. Sign in if you would like to sign in for the Lexington kind of party meeting. Where would you like to see position themselves in the room? You can sit anywhere you would like. Yes. It's a dangerous state. I know, man. I know that just not all of them. Just not bombarding. So yeah, it's like not.
Nobody. All my officers, everybody get it good to say that. They're talking.
anything else.
We are.
We can possibly go loot the principal's office.
I know, I know. That's in front of you.
Did it? Just disconnect?
No, it's-
All right. Welcome, everybody. I see a lot of new faces. I'm Chris McCurry, the chair of the Lexington County Democratic Party. I would like to thank River Bluff and their Young Democrats for hosting us tonight. A couple months ago, when our wonderful new superintendent of education won the primary. I envisioned tonight, and I'm glad it came to fruition because I've got two goals as chair myself. Number one is to lift women and children, especially women of color. But the next is try to connect these guys and gals with all of us older ones. Because if you haven't noticed, we're gonna need them to replace us one day. So when I was able to get Lisa to come see us tonight, I definitely wanted to secure River Bluff so she could actually speak to the people that she's gonna impact the most. So without further ado, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
And we are gonna just kind of prolong things because our first speaker is running a little bit behind. I do want to introduce the people that are in this room that are a part of our party. We've got Macaulay Morrison, who is our third vice chair. She's the one that's going to be in contact with you guys. We've got, y'all know Jeremy, our executive committee man. We've got David Stewart, who is on our rules. Are you on rules and bylaws or are you on?
Neither one, I got kicked off one.
So, and that, I skipped over Iris. Iris who is my backup, our first vice chair. I did notice online, our executive committee woman, Abby Cook, is there. And she's the only one. So if there's any other officers, I'm sorry. And in the room, we have Judd Larkins, running for second. If you want, because we're prolonging things, if you want, as soon as our school board guys introduce themselves, 2 minutes. Can you do 2 minutes? 1 minute?
1 to 10, 1 to 10.
So I thought if we're gonna turn our democratic process over to the young folks, better give them practice. So at this point, I'm gonna step away and let them take control. Is it Emily? Emily, if Judd gets out of control, we got this gavel.
Hey everyone, we just want to thank you again for coming tonight. So basically what we do here is we're the Young Adult Democrats. I'm Bryson Harry, Emily and Nasir. They'll all introduce themselves later. But yeah, what we do here is we run meetings every other Friday. I mean, it's open to everyone in the school. We start off with our tallest Teenage Republicans group, and we then split up and we do little things in our individual groups. And yeah, we teach them about the political process. We teach them about what each group stands for, and we let them figure out for themselves where they fit. And we think that's very important because as future voters, we want everyone to know where they fit and how they can participate in the political process. And that's at least the most important part, because we want knowledgeable voters, and that's what we're trying to do here at Riverbluff. So we want to thank you for having your meeting here. It's an honor to host it, and it's an honor to have so many candidates here to speak and share their opinions and share the platform. So thank you.
Okay, like Bryson said, my name is Emily. I'm also one of the officers here for the American Democrats Association here at River Bluff. And another thing we also do is talk about current political events, which I find mostly interesting, things like, as we all know, January 6th. We all like to discuss those things and knowledge the young public because, you know, these are very important events that are happening here in our very country, especially things that happen here in the state as well. So we have to educate them so, you know, history does not repeat itself.
And as he said, my name is Nasir, right? And I'm also a member of the YAD Association. I'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Michael Burgess. He's a teacher in and one of like the greatest people I've ever met.
He put you up to it.
We got him Chick-fil-A. We drive them. No, there's a $5 bill. He slid across the table.
Okay, so our first speaker we're gonna have tonight is Mike Satterfield. He is one of the candidates for the Lexington Richland 5 School Board. So
I'm a former teacher and a coach, and a principal, so I really don't need a microphone. My wife, I was telling somebody earlier, my wife says I talk too loud anyway. It's probably because my hearing's going as I've gotten older. Let's see, I spent 33 years in public education. I started out as a teacher and a coach. I coached football and basketball and some other sports, whatever was asked of me. I taught physical education, health, and sex ed to middle school. You want to learn something, teach sex education to middle school. But that was a great experience. I enjoyed it very much. I decided after 16 years of that, I would go back to USC and get my admin certification, which required a master's plus 30. I did that, and I started working as an assistant principal, and I actually worked in all 3 clusters in our district. I did that for 17 years. Just to give you a little background, I'm married. I've been married for 48 years. It's a long time. I am that old. My wife and I were high school sweethearts. I was in the Navy. I served 4 years in the Navy as a foreman. If you don't know what that is, if you watch any of the old war movies and the guys get injured, they yell, "Foreman, foreman." That's what I did. when I got out of the service, I was stationed in Jacksonville, Florida. When I got out of the service, we relocated to Columbia. My wife's parents were from Columbia, and her father was from Olympia. He was one of the original lint heads. If you're from this area, then you know what that means. So we settled in Columbia. Under the GI Bill, I was able to go to University of South Carolina. My wife and I both decided we'd become teachers, and so that's the route we take. That's how I got where I am. My wife is also a retired teacher. She taught for 28 years, and she taught elementary school. I have 3 children. I have 3 grandchildren. My oldest is here, Mary Rose. She's an English teacher at Chapin High School. My middle son works at Food Line. He's mentally handicapped. My youngest is a musician in Nashville. So I saw your Hootie thing. He's very good friends with stars from Hootie. But that's a little bit of background. I have a great interest in school still. You know, once you've taught in schools, and once you've been part of students' lives, it's sort of in your blood. I don't know if there are any other teachers here or whatever, but it sticks with you. It becomes part of you. I mean, there's nothing better, I would say, than having a former student come up and speak to you. Even if you don't recognize them after 33 years, I can't remember all their names, but they surely do expect me to. You know, it's just a great thing when they come up and thank you, you know, for what you've done in their lives, or they ask me, say, Coach or Mr. Satterfield, do you remember? And I always say, yes, I do. Sometimes I don't. I will tell you that I learned how I was reminded how old I'm getting when I was principal, and I would shake hands with the students as they came across the stage. And I had students that were the sons and daughters of my former students. But yesterday, I was at Publix getting ice cream that I don't really need, but I do love. And I heard a truck horn honk, and he pulled up next to me, and he rolled the window down and said, Coach, it was one of my former players. He goes, just want to let you know that I retired yesterday. Think about that. He said, I retired. So I've been retired for 6 years. And I did have a lot of folks contact me and ask me to consider running for board. You know, I really thought long and hard about this. All you got to do is watch the news. You see all the issues, I guess, with school boards nowadays. And in our district, I know I played pickleball with one guy from Lexington too, and he's on the school board there. And I said, how do you like being on the board? He goes, it's tough sometimes, but we always say, at least we're not Lexington. So he's right. But I decided to run for school board because I do have that attachment with schools and with kids. I feel like I have a lot to offer. After 33 years, you know, when school boards start making decisions that impact kids, I don't care if it's about money or if it's about facilities or rezoning or bond referendums, whatever it is, it impacts kids. And if it's great to have people from the community involved with your school board, but it sure is nice if you got somebody who knows exactly how this is going to impact it. And after November 8th, there's not going to be anyone. I know Scott is with the University of South Carolina, so he is in education. But there won't be anybody that has the day-to-day experience with academics and students and special education and all of that I was involved with over the years. So that's the reason I'm running. I feel like I can hopefully contribute to our board when we start making all these decisions. I know that a couple of months ago they were presenting and talked about a $150 million bond referendum. Well, I know you need people like Michael, who works with schools, who understands the financial part of that, but you need to understand how it's going to impact kids. Because it's not the same as running a grocery store or a real estate office. It's just not. You can't look at it as simply as dollars and cents. It just doesn't work that way. So that's the reason I decided to run. And there are a lot of issues. You know, if you watch the news, there are a lot of issues right now with schools and the things that they're wrestling. School safety. I mean, that's in the news just about every day. And school safety isn't just about shooters in schools. That's the worst case scenario. That's everybody's nightmare. But there's a lot of other issues with school safety. I mean, teacher disrespect and teachers being bullied, students being bullied. When I was principal, I dealt with cyberbullying. Believe it or not, I've been retired for over 6 years. So I dealt with MySpace. You remember MySpace? Well, the way the law is,
I can tell you who doesn't know.
they'll Google it when they leave here. But I dealt with MySpace, and if the bullying that came along with that, and whether you know it or not, schools have to deal with that, and they need to know how to deal with it. If the way the laws are written, and the way that the policy is, if something happens away from school, but it carries over into school, it's the school's responsibility to deal with that. A lot of folks don't realize that. I'd have parents actually, what do you do? Because it affects our school climate. It affects how we're operating our school. But that's one of several issues with regards to bullying. I mean, if you do the research, you'll know that the suicide rate in teenagers, especially teenage girls, young girls, 10 to 15 has the highest suicide rate. Imagine that, because other kids are bullying. There's just so many things there. We've got to just establish school climates. I mean, I was looking at this beautiful school. This is a beautiful school. I mean, I'm envious of this. But schools should be a place where kids go and teachers go and everybody feels safe, but they also should feel good. They should have an attachment to their school. You can't just put more guns and more policemen in schools and make it safe. You got to make that a place that they want to be with. It's like their second home where they really want to be. So you have to take that sort of perspective. I believe that's what I had success with. Another big issue is teacher pay. I'll be honest with you, I grew weary of fighting the issue with teacher pay. I don't know who came up with the idea that says, or thought it was a good idea. Well, let's see. Let's compare ourselves to Georgia, Mississippi, and North Carolina. All right, so there we go. That's the standard. We use the same scale we've always used, and we just compare ourselves to a couple other states. So that must be the right way to do it. It's not. Teachers should be paid what they're worth. Teachers should be paid as other professionals are paid. You probably don't know this, but I challenge you to do this. Go back and look at your district's teacher salaries. It's public information. I can tell you that in my district, if you're a first year, you guys put your fingers in yours because I want you to be teachers one day. If you're a first year teacher with a bachelor's degree, there's a salary, and I'm going to use, and Michael knows it, there's a salary, and let's say it's $40,000. Well, the next year, everybody knows what the cost of living is, 2% a year, correct? Then that's pretty much what it is. Cost of living goes up 2% a year. So let's look at this. If you're a first year teacher and you make $40,000 a year, guess how much of a raise you get the second year? You get $120 for the whole year. $120 for the whole year.
Oh, I know.
So listen, after taxes, it's not even $10. And think about this. The educators are paid on a scale where if you get more education, you get more pay. If you get a bachelor's plus 18, as they call it, you get a bump in your pay, right, teachers? Teachers do, right? You get a bump in your pay. Well, if you do the math again, and I sort of looked at this, the cost of 18 hours going to USC is about $10,500. So you might get a $2,000 bump in pay for your master's plus 18. Different districts are different, but it's going to cost you $10,000 to get there. I don't understand, and this would be a good thing for our new superintendent to consider. Why not have matching funds to help teachers pay for their tuition? It benefits the school. If you get a higher degree or a greater degree, or more of a degree, call it whatever you want, it makes you a better teacher, does it not? And in anything in life, the higher degree you get, the more value valuable you become to those school districts or to whatever job it is that you do. If it, let's see, if it costs $10,500, it's, and that's what I'm rounding these numbers up. For 18 hours, teachers typically take 6 hours in the summer, right? Teachers, usually that's 2 courses, 6 hours in the summer. So if we max them $50 a month or $50 a month that they put in, it would pay for their degree. It would pay their expenses. It would help them pay for their expenses. I mean, it's pretty simple. $100 a month. I mean, you're getting $1,200 a year, but you're getting a better teacher, somebody who can teach children more effectively. And you help raise the pay scale for teachers. You know, I'll be honest with you, I have a whole list of things, and I know that people look at me like this has been beyond a long time. There's all kinds of reasons that we need things that we need to look at for schools. I mean, school safety, a certain one. This division, this political divide is driving me nuts. I will tell you, I'm neither a Democrat or a Republican. I vote for the best person. You should know that right up front. I vote for the best person. That's the way I've always been. I voted both sides of the coin. I vote for the best person. But I am sick and tired of people using words like gender identity or CRT or all this other nonsense to divide our schools. It is dividing our communities. It's dividing our schools. Are there issues out there? Sure. School, it's no different than it's always been. That's what I don't understand. All of a sudden, listen, most politicians, when they run for office, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about, let's say you're the governor, or you're the president. What do they used to say? We got to improve education. We got to make schools better. We got to make schools safer. Did they ever tell you how they were going to do it? No, they don't. You know why? They don't know it. They do not know it. Now, those buzzwords don't work anymore, do they? So now they decided, let's use some other buzzwords that we can further divide our parties with. That's what they do. They use the new buzzwords and they divide our parties. And they're just scare tactics. That's all they are. It drives most people with common sense crazy. It really does. But again, I'm not going to continue on. There are a myriad of other things that schools need to look at. But again, my name is Mike Satterfield. I know that probably none of you live in my district. You do? That's okay. But I will tell you this: if you have any questions, I have a web page on Facebook, and on there I put my name and my phone number. Who does that? I put my phone number and said, if you have any questions about schools, about education, look, there is a huge divide with our educational system. There is. I work with schools that are on the lower end of had a high number of free and reduced lunch, the lower socioeconomic end, and I've worked on the upper end. There are issues. I can tell you there are issues. All things being equal, they're not equal. They're not equal. And I don't know why folks are afraid to say that, but they just don't. I guess they're afraid to. They're afraid of they're making somebody mad or not getting a vote for somebody else. But again, my number's on there. My number's on there. If you feel like it's on Facebook, Mike Satterfield for School Board. If you have any questions, your friends have any questions, I don't care if it's about you or if you want questions to ask your local school board people at meetings, give me a call. I'll give you some good questions to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Satterfield. We appreciate that. Our next speaker tonight is going to be Mr. Scott Weary.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you, Mike, for being here too. I appreciate all your works, and really happy to be here to speak with you about my candidacy and plans that I have for the school board. I also wanted to take a second to thank team members that are tonight. They've been terrific over the past few weeks. I jumped into this race very late, and they have done a wonderful job of educating me and helping me raise funds and get things moving. So I really appreciate that. Just a little bit about me. I've been teaching in one way or another, basically since I was a high school freshman. I started helping my high school band director teach summer band, began teaching lessons as a high school student, taught all through my college career, and then began music teaching career in 1999. And I'm in my 21st year now at the University of South Carolina, where I teach in the School of Music with some wonderful colleagues and faculty there. I'm often asked, why on earth would you decide to run for the school board? Are you crazy? Are you trying to beat yourself up here? What is the problem? And I was like, maybe, I don't know. I'll let you know in November after we see what happens, right? But once I did file for the candidacy, this group of people started coming out of the woodwork to contact me and say, we need you on the board. We need your vision and your help, because we know how passionate you are as an educator yourself, and think you can help, put that kind of passion and vision onto the school board. I currently have 2 kids in the Irmo cluster. I myself am an educator. I'm married to a 26-year veteran teacher, and my very program at the University of South Carolina depends on the students from these districts. I'm a pinnacle stakeholder. I can't imagine someone else that would be more invested in our school and needing our schools to be top notch. Lately, the actions of our particular board, which Mike alluded to, and some of the behaviors have been just really despicable in many ways. We need some change, and that is what I'm hearing from the parents in the district. That's what I'm hearing from the students in the district. They are not currently student or teacher centered in the decisions and their vision. That does not seem to be their current mission, and that's what we are here to make a difference and change. When I talk to teachers in our district, and I talk to a lot of them, they are tired. They are overworked. They are mentally exhausted from the pandemic and the post-pandemic learning losses that they're dealing with. And they're not respected. They're being met with a lot of opposition, and fighting that has to start at the top. It has to start with the board. The board themselves have to be supporters and advocates for the teachers and the students. And that will influence our community and how they behave with our teachers. Teacher retention in our district is alarming. Like Lisa, I definitely support less paperwork, less testing for the teachers so that they can do their job. We need to trust our teachers to do what they know how to do for our students. They are the experts, not us. Recently, the District 5 administration has not helped this process. They have had some very questionable procedures in hiring and vetting candidates, which I have been very vocal about, straight all the way to the top. Last year, six of 7 of my son's teachers left Irmo High School. That is just alarming. There were 26 teachers that had to be interviewed and hired this year, and that the rate of that is alarming to me. So as a board member, I want to be a champion for the teachers and the students in the district. That should be our mission. I want to make data-driven decisions about things like school safety, about programs, about allocation of resources throughout the district. That is my mission, to make sure we have the quality in this district that we've been looking for. And I know those are lofty goals, and it can only happen if I get elected, and that's where you come in. You can help spread the word. I'm happy to talk to any of you afterwards about this. We have cards, links to our website as well. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, next up we have Jalen Elrod. He will be our next speaker. So if you will come up, Mr. Elrod, we'd love to have you.
We'll give Judd 2 minutes.
2 minutes, oh goodness, oh goodness. I
Don't
might
take-
put down the speech a lot then, come on, Chris, you know, I talked for at least 30.
I know.
That's why I said 1 minute.
I'll write it down, right, thanks so much.
Just speak up.
Are you used to mic?
Keep on Zoom.
Yeah,
I'm used to mic there. People are- Hopefully.
they heard Mike without the mic.
Thank you. He's got a little more practice than I do. All right, hopefully this will work well for those on Zoom. Thank y'all for having me. I am Judd Larkin, and I am running for the 2nd Congressional District, which if you live in Lexington, you are in the 2nd Congressional District. If you live in Richland, we'll have to talk because it gets a little tricky. I do want to give a shout out to the Irmo mayor, Mr. Barry Walker, who is in the room here at the back. He's on slip tonight. And again, I'm looking forward to the Okra Strut this weekend. Should be a fun time. Folks, I am in this race because I want to put the second district first. It's time to flip a page. It's time to move on to the next chapter. We've had 21 years of incumbent, and it's time that we do something different, newer, and better. And folks, my platform is based on three things. First is us securing our future. That is for our younger generations and our older generations. My platform is based on investing in our rural communities. Because out in rural Lexington and Aiken and Barnwell and Orangeburg counties, we need to make sure they have the same resources there as we do sitting here today in River Bluff. And folks, we also need to think about what do we want our government to look like moving forward. We are at a crossroads, as they mentioned here. And folks, we need to bring it back to working for the people here in this district. And since we're at a River Bluff, and since I'm not too far removed from high school myself, as a proud graduate of 96 high school, it's about an hour up the road. I want to say that I am in this to make sure that we do set up the future for our younger generations. We need to make college more affordable and tech schools free. Because why? Because I have a lot of student loan debt. I know how crippling it can be. We need to make sure that the economy works for everyone. Because folks, I own a small business and I've been on the other side. We need to make sure that it works for everyone so that everyone can have a living wage. And folks, we need to make sure that everybody is set up for success. And that means investing in our areas, making sure that every school, or regardless of where it is, has similar resources to what we have here in River Bluff and other schools across this region. So folks, I'm probably at my limit. The young, I forgot what y'all's names are. Young American Democrats learning all of these algorithms, or not algorithms, acronyms here. I would love to talk to y'all afterwards because we got some exciting opportunities, including a parade very soon. If y'all want to walk in a parade this Saturday, never mind. But we have cards, and I'll be around. Website is juddlarkins.com. Please get involved. Please get involved in these races, from school board to state superintendent education to other state and local races, all the way up to a federal, because we can't do it alone. This is the ultimate team sport. So thank y'all so much. And next up, Jalen Elrod, all the way from Greenville.
And point of privilege being chair, I am breaking in the order of things. Jalen was going to be our first speaker after I became chair in March. And unfortunately, his mother passed and we had to rebook him. So he was another perfect fit for this education themed night because he is our third vice chair for the South Carolina Democratic Party. His goal is my goal to get these young guys and gals out and active in the political process. That's enough. And yes, thank you, Judd, for introducing Mayor Walker. He did it to me. He snuck in last meeting and he snuck in this meeting. So thank you for joining us tonight. Jalen.
How y'all doing tonight? Good, y'all sound enthusiastic. I don't think it's Is that better? Awesome. Chris, you said you booked me. You make me sound far more important than I actually am. I said you would. But my name is Jalen Elrod. I am third vice chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. I'm from Greenville County. It's always good to be in Lexington County. I made a promise when I became third vice chair to visit every single county in the state of South Carolina. And after Lexington County, I have 7 more to go. So next up, go see what's happening down in Lee County. But I want to take the time out to say hey to Judd, our next congressman representing the 2nd Congressional District. I want to say Lisa is always a blessing to be in your presence. Our next superintendent, the next Democrat is going to be a representative well. It's good to see young people here. I recently turned 30, so I'm not really a young person anymore, but it's good to see y'all engaged. We're there. It's okay. It's okay. But when I was y'all there, I was lucky enough to intern for the Obama campaign. When Barack Obama ran for president, I was 14. And they were lucky, I was lucky enough to go around with them, organizing phone banks and canvases, going to barbershops, beauty salons, really seeing what that grassroots organizing, grassroots campaigning could do. And what, 14 years, 30 campaigns, and 3 or 4 party officer positions later, here I am. So I want to tell you, in all seriousness, the work you guys do is inspiring at a time when there are too many adults in our communities and in our nation that don't care about the future of this nation. To see you all here today, it really gives a light of hope in the time we really need it. So I think we should give them a round of applause. So I was wondering, build on what everybody else has said, that I want to try to do a Q&A. I think what Judge said really pertains to where we are. It really is going to be from a bottom-up approach. We need more people who are going to get elected, who are going to get elected to the school board, to make sure our kids have a quality education. We need to make sure our teachers are paid what they deserve. We need to recruit an army of new teachers in the state of South Carolina, because correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, there is a teacher shortage here that is really affecting our classrooms. We need to elect a superintendent that, first of all, meets the qualifications for the office, unlike her opponent. We need to elect a superintendent that are going to put our children and our teachers ahead of politics and partisanship. And that's why I'm so happy that we are all here today to have school board members, superintendent members, people running for Congress. Who's not looking my way right now. Hey, Judge, it's okay. To make sure we continue to build up. So some of the things that I'm excited about us doing at the state party are phone banks, canvases, text banking, going to rallies for our candidates who are running statewide, and make sure that Democrats have a fighting chance this November. Because not just regarding education, but when we see what Republicans are doing in the state house and the state senate right now with these draconian measures to restrict a woman's right to choose, when we see what they've done over the past 2 years, things like expanding our death penalty to include firing squads at a time when other states are abolishing the death penalty, when we see the disregard that Henry McMaster has for working people, for those who are disenfranchised, those who are impoverished, we know that we are the last best hope for this state. And what we do here today is important, because people are going to suffer if we don't succeed. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do as third vice chair. That's why I'm so inspired by these young people. And that's why I'm so happy to see all of you here today. So I hope this won't be our last meeting. And I hope you'll leave from here phone banking for me, phone banking for Judge, phone banking for our school board members, text banking for them, knocking on doors for them, writing postcards for them. And correct me if I'm wrong, going to their AdBlue pages and actually donating to their campaign, because money's a little short sometimes. And I truly believe we can move this state forward. So I'm going to take this time for a little bit of a Q&A if I can, answer some questions, because I don't want you guys to just sit me watch me sit up here and just ramble and talk about nothing. So any questions, comments, concerns? I'm all ears. Yes, ma'am.
So, as part of the ads in our school, we've had a lot of, or not just Lexington, but the Democratic State Party in a whole, we're talking about like events and getting people to come together for us with communication. Is there any way that you could see a change to that in the future? I mean, I know it's probably not just about our school, but having more involvement with like the government, trying to politics, being more involved in school tax people.
Do you mean getting elected officials here or
Not
Democratic Party leadership?
Having like I know it's hard, but they have like
Right.
And just kind of getting more of, I guess, feel for politics in the classroom. I do think you can see a change for that if there's like any way that we can have. I don't know what I'm.
So we can have more involvement, more opportunity, I'm more involved with politics.
Yeah, I think I can't.
The question.
The question was how, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. The question was how we can get local elected officials, statewide elected officials more involved in the school here for the young people who want to see more political opportunities. I can't speak for the R side, really don't want to, but I think for Democrats here, you can call me. I can get you in touch with pretty much any Democratic elected official in the state of South Carolina. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to come and speak to you guys simply because it's campaign season and again, they need people phone banking and knocking doors to them. So y'all probably they need y'all more than y'all need them. So I'll be happy to share my contact information and get it over to the appropriate campaigns. But you know, you already got a statewide candidate here. You already got a judge here, several school board members. So I think you guys are taking the right approach already.
And again, as a point of privilege, we've made introductions with the county party tonight. You're not gonna hear, or you will hear from us. This isn't gonna be the last time that you hear from us. Probably being Macaulay, our third vice chair in the same position at the county level. But Lexington Democrats will get behind you guys.
There you go.
Can I add something to that? As a former substitute teacher, I have been coming to speak to YAB for the longest of time, ever since I was a substitute teacher here. So I have been trying to get something like this for the longest of times. I've gotten Trav to come speak to you guys and y'all love that. But, you know, I'm glad that as a, you know, county elected official that I could get this to come, and this is the future. We're gonna definitely get some more people here. So happy.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll let you guys save it all for Lisa, then I don't want to take too much time. Again, I just want to say thank you to y'all for having us. Thank you to all of you for being here. And again, please don't forget to support the candidates that we have here. I know it is great to show up for these Democratic Party meetings, but what they really need, and I say that someone who is currently working for Super PAC, but just got back from a state senate race up in Delaware. They need you knocking doors and phone banking, canvassing for them and donating money if you can. I'm sure every little bit helps. Because these are tough races. Gerrymandering has entrenched so many Republicans who are doing horrible things at the school board level, at the state house level, the state senate level. And we can't afford 4 more years of the status quo. So I really do beg you to get involved in every way you can. Chris, I want to thank you again for having me. The support you've shown me, the kindness you've shown me, it really has gone a long way. And I'll be here later on and I'll keep pushing forward with you. But thank y'all, appreciate it.
Okay, I guess, yeah, that's 1, that's 7.
And last but certainly not least, Miss Lisa Ellis himself, the superintendent of South Carolina, of Education South Carolina.
That's not how, wait a minute. That's not how you said you were gonna introduce her.
I mean, trying to get like extravagant.
Absolutely.
The bold, brave, and beautiful women of the hour. We always wait for them. Lisa.
I think I need the microphone either. Do you want to check and see, or?
If I get feedback here, I'll.
Okay, okay. And I'm hiring you to come and introduce me in everything. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me come and speak. I don't like to come back to y'all. But just wanted to introduce myself. I think the last time that I talked to y'all was on Zoom when I was in the middle of skate night back during senior week in May. So it's such a pleasure to be back. My name is Lisa Ellis. I'm running for South Carolina Superintendent of Education. I am currently in my 22nd year at Blythewood High School, which is in Richland too. So I really appreciate y'all making fun of the school board, because Richland too, I think, was like, hold my beer, because we're under. Sorry, y'all aren't 21 yet, but you know about beer. So I understand completely some of the shenanigans that are going on around the state. I am the director of student activities at microphone. I am the director of student activities at Blythewood High School.
People often go, what job is that? It's the best job that exists. I work with students, planning and implementing school-wide extracurricular activities. So for example, we have homecoming week next week. We do prom, we do graduation, we do all the community service, our lunch activities, all of that runs through me, fundraising, and it's a fantastic job. It's actually a job I don't want to leave, depending on what happens on November 8th. But so, you know, I figure I'm happy either way. If I win, or I'm supposed to say when I win, I have the opportunity to affect policy at the state level, much needed policy. If I don't win, then I get to go back to a job and working with students that I truly, truly enjoy. 4 years ago, I founded the organization SD for Ed, which was a grassroots, turned into a grassroots advocacy movement to place a high quality teacher in every classroom. For 4 years, we have worked trying to increase teacher pay, trying to improve working conditions to keep teachers in the classroom. And really over the last 2 years, particularly with COVID, I have just honestly become demoralized and distraught watching my colleagues and my good friends leave permanently. You know, people get criticized us for All Out May 1, which Coach Burgess was one of the speakers there. Criticized us because they were like, I can't believe that you told teachers to leave class for a day. And so I got kind of tired of hearing that because we asked for a day to make a point. And so that was May 1st, 2019. Since 2019, there have been 14,997 teachers who left the classroom permanently. So just to give you that statistic. Last year, we started the school year with 1,000 classrooms without a teacher. Between August and December, another 977 teachers left mid-year. SD for Ed did our teacher vacancy report in June, and there were 3,700 vacancies, and that's after teacher contracts were signed. So we don't have the data right now for where we currently are at, but I can tell you it's terrible. I'm at Blythewood High School. It is an amazing school with great school administration, and we are missing 4 teachers. Our graphics teacher lasted 4 days. And so now we have that opening. We're missing special ed teachers and of course, instructional assistants. So when people talk to me and ask me what the first thing that I'm going to do in office is, we've got to work on teacher recruitment and retention. And so that's the number one thing. Any other issue that they say we've got to worry about is not an issue until we get teachers back in the classroom. And I need to preface that by saying, when I talk about teachers, I'm talking about anyone who interacts with kids. So that includes bus drivers, that includes instructional assistants, that includes cafeteria workers, custodial workers, even school administration. We've got to get those people that deal with students every day back in there. I don't know if y'all have a problem with bus driver shortages. Yeah. We have consistently, last week we had 4 bus drivers quit the first week. But we had consistently last week, students were not getting to school until the middle of second period because we didn't have enough buses. And so when you talk about learning loss or you talk about academic achievement, if a student is consistently missing part of their first period and into their second, that's not their fault, right? So we've got to do better. And so that's really what the focus will be on. We've got to do it through salary. You'll talk about salary. I laughed at the salary increase. The state increased the minimum salary schedule this year by $4,000 on the salary schedule posted by the state, which only goes to year 23. So if you're a teacher that has been teaching since before 2012, you can retire at year 28. But the salary schedule stops at year 23. And I don't understand that, right? Because I've still got 5 more years of teaching. And so I asked that question to one of the South Carolina senators. Why does it stop at year 23 when I've got to work until 28? And he said, well, that's when police officers can retire. I said, okay, but I'm a teacher. Well, yeah, but that's when police officers retire. And I was like, I don't understand, you know, and so that's sort of what we're dealing with. And where that becomes an issue is places that, because we have such an inequity of pay across the state. For example, in Hampton County, their teacher salary schedule stops at year 23. So those teachers get to year 23, year 24, they apply to Charleston County and can move to Charleston County making $15,000, $20,000 more. And so you're losing your veteran teachers in particular because of that. Same thing, I was just in Marion and Dillon yesterday. Marion, their instructional assistants make $14,000 a year. I'm pretty sure it's below poverty, right? Okay. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about salary. The second piece is working conditions, and that is all of the hoops that teachers have to jump through in order to be certified, in order to get recertified, but also just the day-to-day. I have always been one of those road teachers that when somebody tells me I've got to do something, I always raise my hand.
This is Sue Taylor finally on the wire.
Interest of students. And
Sue Taylor on.
the response is, well, we've got to check this box. And that is infuriating to me, because if you can't tell me how it's in the best interest of the students I teach, then I don't need to be doing it. And yet we keep creating jobs in districts. Richland 2 is a perfect example of over the top bureaucracy that we then have to justify jobs. And so that's one of the pieces of the working conditions that I really want to address. And that's something that I believe that I can address immediately with the Department of Ed because of all of their mandates. So that's sort of this. I would love to take questions again. So I'm answering the questions that you have, but I just want you to understand that the number one issue in South Carolina right now in terms of education is teacher recruitment and retention. Yes.
It's been about 24 years since South Carolina elected a Democratic governor's office for the U.S. Senate. It's been about, I want to say 2006, so that would be 16 years since the last time we elected a Democrat statewide to superintendent position. And he won by, I think, 500 votes. Democrats didn't even Democrat he won. I think that to say, what is your strategy going into November to win a statewide office that has eluded Democrats for the majority of most of our lifetime?
That's a great question. My strategy is to get in front of as many people as I can. That's why I'm traveling the state. I am evidently at a disadvantage. I didn't know that when you ran for state office, you were supposed to quit your job. I'm still working because I don't have anybody else to pay the bills. I am also a member of the Alliance Party, mainly because of Jim Rex, and he said, "What do you mean you're not taking a leave of absence?" And I said, I mean, I've got to pay the bills. And he said, "Well, we need to get you a sugar daddy." And I was like, "Well, from your lips to God's ears, I'll take a sugar daddy." Sure. He has not found me one yet, so therefore I'm going to be. But that's what I'm doing on the evenings and weekends, trying to get out to as many people, and here's why. My Republican opponent, it's going to get ugly, right? It's going to be slander. It's going to get ugly. And my hope is that enough people will have met me, or at least heard about me, or have a friend that met me, or a family member that can say, "No, she's not what they're saying. That's not who she is." And so I have, as well as saying, getting out and getting to all of these areas and figuring out what the problems are in different areas of the state, because we have statewide problems like the teacher recruitment and retention, but you go to a Dillon or a Marion, and they really are dealing with no local funding. We are blessed in the Midlands to have that, a significant chunk of local funding. They have none. And so trying to figure out how they are coping with that. When you go to other areas of the state, you're dealing with local issues there. those sort of things. So just trying to make sure that I understand what everybody's dealing with. Every student in South Carolina deserves access to a high quality education, regardless of what their zip code is or what their personal situation is, but we are not necessarily providing that. And I think we're not providing that, number one, because we're underfunding our school system at the state level. Last school year, the General Assembly underfunded our school system $700 per student. So when you think about at Blackwood High School, we have 2,100 students. My background is English, so 2,100 times 700, that's a lot of money, right? And we talk about mental health, we talk about social workers, but that's the funding that makes that happen. And so what's happening, I was going to go back to the $4,000 salary increase. Sorry, it's been a long day. We did pickleball today. We have a pickleball tournament. And so they were excited. They're like, now I can play with my grandparents. So the $4,000 salary that the state did, the caveat, and remember y'all, we have the biggest budget surplus we have had, I don't want to say ever, but we have had in a long time. $4,000 to each salary step up to year 23. But the districts had to pay 30% of it, okay? 30%. And if you were a district that already paid over that minimum salary schedule, you did not have to give your teachers the $4,000. So think about a Marion or a Dillon having to come up with 30% to cover that $4,000. Richland 2 pays over it. So I did not see $4,000. I saw $1,700, which if you want to know, equates to $11 a paycheck. I went to buy a salad from our cafeteria 2 weeks ago. That salad was $5.75. And I remember thinking, that is half of my pay salary increase. So that's what we're dealing with. We've got to get that salary competitive. And we've got to hold our state legislature accountable for making sure that we're funding education. Because when they fully fund education, that frees up all of that local funding to do what you need to do in your area. And gives the districts the flexibility to spend that without having to pay for teacher salaries, those sort of things. Yeah.
I'm in District 5. I don't have kids, but I pay taxes. When I moved here 40 years ago, District 5 was one of the premium districts in the entire state. It was premium. Well, I don't know about that, Mayor, but I support what you're doing as far as education, teacher retention, and so on. I think we should also be concerned about who are the people that are on the school boards. I know there's people here who are going to be standing for election in a couple of months. Is there any, I know these guys are elected too. I don't know how much influence you have over these people, except for maybe training, trying to find some kind of standard of excellence, or do they go back for continuing education? What kind of a premium level of education can you teach these people who are on school boards, not just Lexington 5, but I'm sure that's not the only district that's got problems. For 10 years, all we see about the Lexington 5 is lawsuits. Why should we be spending money on that instead of the teachers that you want to get?
That's a great question. Thank you. I know that school boards join School Boards Association, and they do a lot of professional development, a lot of training, all of that. You know, ultimately, with the exception of Dillon, where they appoint their school boards, our school boards are elected. And so, you know, people talk about how the midterms are often there's less turnout. To me, every election is important, but the midterms are the most important for our daily lives, because you're voting on your local school board, you're voting on your local house member, you're voting on, the governor, and then in this case, the superintendent of education. So we have to make sure that we are encouraging ourselves to do the research. I know that in Richland 2, we do a school board candidate forum that they Zoom, to listen to. Do they do that in Lexington 1 and Lexington 5? So, it's important to pay attention to that. It's also honestly important to, pay attention to that, but talk to, your teachers, because I will tell you who to vote for Richland 2. And I live in Richland 1, and I will tell people who to vote for in Richland 1, because living with a school board for the last however many years that has gotten to physical fights and gotten to verbal altercations and all of that, it's an embarrassing to arrest. It's embarrassing to be a part of that district. And also nothing is getting done to help the schools because they're too busy infighting. As far as what the superintendent of education can do, I know that I have the power, or the position has the authority to take over school districts. I think in the past, most of that has come because of test scores, which I have a big problem with. I'm more concerned really about the fiscal transparency and accountability of how school districts are spending their money. I want to make sure that that money is getting down into the classroom. So I honestly don't know the answer to that. If nothing else, I will use this office and this platform to have a stern talking to, or I tell people I'm not above shaming people when they act like a fool, because we are representative of children, right? Children are watching. And so, when I think about my campaign and people are like, well, are you going to get ugly about it? No, because A, I have to look myself in the mirror. B, I have to look my parents in the mirror, and C, I go to school every day and look my students in the face. And so I am not going to ever do anything where I cannot look them in the eye and they have lost the respect for me. Yes.
Tell me about the qualifications of being superintendent. I want to know what your qualifications is. What have you done to do the job?
Okay, so I have been in schools for 22 years. So I started as actually a long-term sub for a teacher who went out on maternity leave in October, and Ridgeview High School hired me full-time that January. So I taught there for 5 years. I actually then became student activities director there, was there for 9 years. Had a administrative change that did not work out. So I moved to Blythewood High School back into the classroom. And that's sort of where this started coming, because in 9 years, the change and expectation of teachers was ridiculous. So I went back in the classroom at Blythewood. I was there for about 1.5 years. And then Robin Hardy hired me at Fairfield Middle School as an instructional coach. And so I was there with her for 2 years, working in Fairfield County, working with teachers there and also their STEM students. She moved to Hand Middle School. I moved with her and taught leadership to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And let me just tell you, it was not leadership students. It was sort of what we call a dumping ground. That was the 1 year that I realized middle school was not for me. So if I have any middle school teachers in here, God bless you. And then at the time, my current principal, Matt Sherman, was named principal at Blythewood High School. And he called and he said, I want you to come back here. So I came back as a journalism and media production teacher for 3 years, and then stepped into the role as director of student activities. The director of student activities role is a hybrid where it's part admin. So with that, while I'm working with students all day, I'm also sitting in an admin meetings. I have a budget. It's not nearly the superintendent of education budget, but it is a lot of sort of administrative leadership work with all that. I also spent 2 summers teaching in Uganda, in northern Uganda there. And so that was eye-opening. And then, of course, my SC for Ed advocacy work. I also have the 2 master's degrees. You have to have a master's degree. I actually have 2. So I am technically qualified for the job as well.
And because she doesn't need to say this, the other candidate, I don't think is near as qualified as that. I'll say it, she doesn't have to. I'm good. I'm giving the
Okay,
students.
so a lot of speakers have mentioned tonight that we have I guess a good word is like a divided politics here in our country and our state. Where do you think your role as state superintendent, or even as like your job now as teachers, like what is our education's like role in that, like maybe democracy?
If you don't mind, repeat that.
So the question is that we have, and help me if I mess it up. We are living in a very divided political and just general arena because of the politics, particularly connected to education. So what would I do as superintendent, or what am I doing now to help with that? Education's role is to prevent idiots from becoming idiots. So, I mean, that's education's role. So, sorry, y'all, my filter, my frontal lobe just sort of turns off about now, so there's no telling what you're gonna hear out of them now. No, that's a great question, and it's one that has been, as someone who is in the school every day, infuriating, because we are all human beings, and we all have so much more in common than we do different. And so we, you know, for whatever reason, to keep power, to keep other people down, you know, we have created these false narratives that do not exist. You know, I remember, and I have been, so for 4 years, I have been on this low simmer burn of just anger, particularly when the General Assembly is in session, because, you know, there are, in particular for education, we'll stick to that topic tonight. In particular, the issues that we need fixing, again, teacher retention and recruitment, that sort of thing. And yet our General Assembly, particularly this last legislative cycle, has done absolutely nothing to help that. Instead, they passed the Save Women's Sports Act, which
Right.
and you know, just really focused on those sort of things. What I have realized is, and then of course the CRT stuff. What I have realized is that they are manufacturing problems, because I walk out in Blackwood High School, I'll sit at lunch because we do a lot of lunch activities, and they're not issues, right? They're not issues with y'all's generation, which is what gives me hope that our future is going to be better. We talk about, you know, my students will come up to me because they know that I'm a huge education advocate, and they'll say, Ms. Ellis, I mean, I don't understand what the big deal is about, you know, people being transgender or people being gay or people being, you know, and I'm like, I know. That's why you're going to save the world. That's why we're going to fix things. So these issues that have become issues are not issues for the kids that we're serving. And so we as teachers have to be vocal about that. We as teachers have to stop sitting on the sidelines and being fearful of getting fired, because they're not going to fire us. There's nobody to replace it. And if they were going to fire somebody, it would be me, and I haven't been fired yet, right? And so we have to really, or Burgess, right? He's still got it done, right? And so from the role of superintendent, again, using that platform, I can make sure people understand, hey, this is not an issue, right? We're not going to do that. I remember sitting and hearing the hours of hearing on the CRT, the anti-truth, all of that at the House last year. And it was infuriating because, you know, one of the House members would say, well, how many requests has the Department of Ed gotten about CRT? And so they would look and say, and it was 319 requests. And they would say, well, but they never followed up with, well, how many were actual issues that were proven to be a thing? So if you're talking about, you know, 50,000 teachers, 800,000 students in public schools, and the Department of Ed only got 319 requests to look into something, it's not an issue, right? And so, you know, I'm of the issue or the mindset of what we call chasing ghosts. We're spending all this time worrying about this stuff while over here, they're dismantling public education by underfunding it, by demoralizing teachers, by saying, you know, this is, our students are doing this, you know, all of that. But while we're over here chasing these ghosts, we're getting screwed. And so my point is to redirect and say, no, here's the actual issues. This is what we need to focus on. And, you know, and if there is somebody that's like, well, they're teaching, you know, my aunt who lives in Texas, thank God. She goes, well, my friend told me that her granddaughter's first grade teacher was telling the students that they all had to be gay. I said, what? And I just, you know, again, filter, and I said, does that even make sense to you? And she goes, well, no, but that's what she's saying. And I said, I'm pretty sure she's not doing that. I said, if anything, there may be a book on the shelf that talks about different types of families, because that's the world we live in, which is a beautiful place to live. But other than talking to her, I just can't imagine that that is the truth. You know, but I think also we as citizens have got to stop engaging in social media and just automatically believing what it's saying is true. I realize how much social media is so detrimental to young people, no offense, because you don't have fully formed brains yet. And so to understand, you know, what is going on, but then even if we as adults are terrible about it, we'll read something and my mother, who I love to death, will say, you know, some thing. And I said, well, where did you hear that? Well, it was on Facebook. And I'm like, Mom, you cannot trust Facebook. MySpace was the thing before Facebook when he was talking about MySpace. And so I think that that's what we've got to do. We've got to, and then we as educators have to make sure that our students are learning critical thinking skills and asking questions. And that goes into the whole testing debacle and all of that. That is a whole other thing.
Okay, so this is background on me. I'm a former substitute teacher, and I hear what you're saying and everything, and I want to redirect that fire and saying, how are you going to redirect that fire in working with the legislature, not even working with them, just trying to get them to like listen to common sense. So like, you know, wake their, like slap on the brain and say, hey, wake up, you know, help the students, because we need mental health counselors, we need to, you know, raise pay for the cafeteria people, the instructional assistants, and it's all these things that are going on in these schools. And as a substitute teacher, I even saw it because that's what my main issue, like thing was, to go into being a substitute, because one, I had the flexibility, and two, I'm young enough to relate to them as you know, on a human level, because sometimes we get bogged down and we have to come to them on their level. So how do we get the legislature to understand them? Which I know that's a tall task, because we know some of the characters in there.
Oh, absolutely. You know, in terms of the funding, particularly, you know, the school, the minimum salary schedule, the General Assembly, that's for teachers. And so when you're talking about substitutes, when you're talking about instructional assistants, when you're talking about all of that, that comes out of local funding. So that's why it's so important for the state to fully fund education again, so that local money can go to increasing all of those salaries. I think, you know, I have had really great success when I can get into the room with a legislator and at the table and have those conversations. You know, the thing that I tell people is I will always every decision I make will be in the best interest of students. That will be the question. How is this in the best interest of students? How does this help students? How does this make students' lives better? The connection to that is most of the time when you're asking that question, when you make teachers' lives better, you automatically make students' lives better. And so a lot of that is going to be connected to teacher and building morale, because if you have happy teachers, you have happy students and students that are performing. And so when I'm able to have those conversations, it's like an aha moment actually for both of us, because they're, participating at the policy level, and I'm participating at well, here's what it looks like when you get down to the classroom level. And so as a teacher, and also, well, I've stepped away, but the founder of SC for Ed, who was the far left Marxist, communist, socialist, union, whatever descriptor, I haven't gotten that seat at the table. But when I'm superintendent of ed, I get that seat at the table. And so, that, and I'll just use a quick example. When the education reform bill came out 4 years ago, one of the pieces in it was salary bands and merit pay. And that is something that we are just really horrifically against, because how do you measure that? And so we were sitting there, and there were about 5 House members in there. It was Russell Lott, it was the Chief of Staff for Jay Lucas, it was Mandy Powers Norrell, I can't remember, 2 others. And so we were sitting there, and they said, we talked about it. I was like, you got to pull this out. This is no good. And they said, well, don't you want to reward good teachers? And I said, okay, well, describe a good teacher for me. And they just sat there, and I was like, no, seriously, I'm asking you, what does a good teacher look like? And they couldn't do it. And that's the point. Good teaching, amazing teaching when you see it, but it's hard to quantify. And I use the example of me as a teacher. I don't care what I teach. I don't, the content has never been my passion. It's been teaching kids. And so my talent is building relationships with kids. Once I build those relationships, they're going to listen to me for about 10 minutes about Shakespeare, right? The teacher next door to me is an amazing biology teacher, and she loves her content. And because she loves her content so much, she gets so engaged and excited that the students get engaged and excited. But we're 2 different teachers with 2 different ways of being successful. How do you put that in a rubric or any sort of metric, right? So you can't do that in teaching. Teaching is an art and a science. The science is you've got to know your content. The art is you've got to be able to deliver it. And that's what we're seeing, teachers that are coming from second careers. I'll use the graphics teacher as an example. She was great at graphics. She lasted 4 days in trying to teach it, right? And so, that's the thing, having those conversations. And like I said earlier, I'm not above shaming people and saying, so-and-so is not willing to come to the table to talk about what is best for our kids in South Carolina. Because if we're not going to elect education people into office, and I tell people, my goal is to get into office, my job will be a lot easier if you elected a pro-education governor, and if you elected pro-education House member, and then pro-student board members. That makes my job a lot easier.
So you said that. Well, what is your specific or just in general plan? What is the goal?
So the question was, what is my specific goal for recruitment and retention? Like I said, you've got salaries and you've got working conditions. Salary and then the recruitment piece, right? We've got to make it, it's not even about keeping our teachers in, but it's getting students who are interested in teaching. And that is really, really tough right now. We have a teacher cadets. Y'all have teacher cadets here? So had one of my students was a teacher cadet last year, and she came in and she was like, "You will not believe what happened today." She was in the second grade classroom. I said, "What?" She goes, "This little kid on his Chromebook typed in, and I can't remember what he typed in, but it took him to a porn site." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Christina, that is such great practice for you as a teacher on how to deal with that. What did you do?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I was horrified. I was horrified. I got her to move quickly away from it," and all that. And I said, "Well, it's such a great life lesson for you to be a teacher." She goes, "I'm not going to be a teacher." And "But you're in teacher cadets." She goes, "Yeah, I'm just getting the college credit. I'm going into business. I went the last 2 days in the classroom." That's what our students are seeing. They're seeing our teachers being burned out and exhausted and leaving. And it's really frustrating, I'm sure, as a student to have multiple teachers. So we've got to, entice people to get in by, of course, making the roles easier, right? Teaching is hard enough as it is. But I think also we need to look at how we're funding. Our education lottery, most of that money goes to Palmetto's Hope and Life scholarships. To me, I would like to see that expanded into, we have teaching fellows, but also teachers, or to be teachers in training who want to go and teach. Let's go ahead and pay for their college through that education lottery, and then have them commit to 5 to 7 years of teaching, because the research shows if you can get them to 5 to 7 years, they're more likely to stay in the profession. And so that's a way to get them interested in coming in. The second piece in terms of recruiting is to make it a little bit easier to get certified. And by that, I mean removing the praxis as one of the testing pieces of the reality is we actually have a lot of teachers right now who want to teach, but are not certified yet because they can't pass the praxis. Praxis is a high stakes test that does not, and I use that as an example of, we've got teachers who are already teaching and have proven themselves effective in the classroom, but because they can't pass this 1 day test, we're preventing them from being certified. A lot of them are having to, teach at substitute pay. So things like that. And then, of course, in terms of the retention, we've got to keep veteran teachers in the classroom to mentor. We've got to relieve a lot of the work expectations to keep them in terms of working conditions. But there's a lot of ideas that I want to try that, for whatever reason, have never been tried before. And see where it goes. And then, of course, class size. I talk to a lot of teachers, particularly elementary teachers, that say, if you can guarantee that I have 18 first graders instead of 25 or 30, I'll come back in a heartbeat, because that automatically reduces workload. So, yeah.
Since we're their guest, I'm gonna give her a question and one last question, because I want to be good guest of River Bluff High School. So
Okay, so from like a student's perspective, like we see a lot of our teachers, like that I speak for yourself, so that I could see like not being disqualified. Like I'm in the confidence, I'm like, there's no way this is that. Not you, Burgess. Anyway, when you talk about taking away like things like tests and stuff, and like how would you really? I know that a simple 1 day test really doesn't determine whether someone can keep talking about, but what other ways would you, I guess, assume or judge possibly disqualified?
So that's a great question. I think, and I completely agree with you. Because people will say, well, what about, we talk about salary increases, people will be like, well, what about the bad teachers? Do they deserve a salary increase? Senator Harpootlian asked me that question. And my answer to that is, until we get teachers, like to fill the pool where stuff, a school district has the option of the bad teacher, or I like to call the weak teacher, or no teacher at all, right? So until you build up that pool of candidates, you're stuck with that weak teacher. Once we get that pool of candidates back, then we can work to get the weak teachers out, or at least start coaching them up. I'm not a fan of high stakes 1 day testing for anybody, for so many reasons. I think that, throughout your lives, you've been taking them since third grade at least, right? It creates test anxiety, which, we're seeing leads into just general anxiety. One of the things that Patrick Kelly, who was with the PSTA and a friend of mine, we talked about creating a mentoring program where teachers co-teach with a master teacher their first year. And so then after that first year where they demonstrated what I would like to say excellence, then you give them their own classroom. And so that's a way to really practice that, or, a semester. The other thing that I've noticed about teacher programs is that they have moved from the student teacher teaching the entire semester to having to teach maybe 6 weeks with maybe 2 weeks on their own. And I don't necessarily think that that is good practice because, 2 weeks is really not a long time to get your feet under you. And so I think we need to look at our traditional programs and how they're graduating teachers. I think we also have to address, we have a lot of international teachers that are coming in to fill these gaps, but that's not necessarily working out really well. And so, I think that again, it's one of those things that we've got to look and see what's working, but we've got to build in that teacher retention. And so we can start getting the weak teachers out. We're at a crisis point, right? But I also think, again, there are plenty of certified teachers in this state. So if we can start making it, lucrative, they'll come back really quickly. And that's what we've really got to do. We've got to address, student discipline. That student discipline and student achievement, we've got to rethink the school report card because that's what's driving that. And so teachers are like, the school discipline is terrible. And that's because of the school report card. So if we change the school report card and how it's measured, then student discipline changes. So it's a lot of asking the right questions and asking why, until we get to what the actual reason is. Does that make sense? Yeah.
My question is very quick.
Okay.
I wanted to add for people who may not be in education when we're talking about teacher pay, is that I personally know teachers who work several jobs. I know a mother who has 3 children. Her husband works nights. She teaches 2nd grade. She works at Nephron. She sells pampered shifts. She caters on the weekend. I don't know how she raises her family and then steps into the classroom and excels. I'd like to see her just teach.
Yeah.
And then go home and relax and take care of her family. So I don't think a lot of people know that. Secondly, I want to ask you, I think it's very important that we control the narrative and that there is not a teacher shortage. And I've appreciated that you have not said that one time tonight. Is that intentional?
Yes, I mean, that's what I keep saying, like there are not enough teachers in the classroom, but in South Carolina, there are plenty of certified teachers. And so it's not so much we've got to go out and find the teachers. And what I've learned is teachers have left, it's never the students. They never leave because of the students. They leave because of school administration, which is why Irmo lost 26 teachers. Sorry, I've said it out loud. They leave because of school administration. They leave, and really that's it, because school administration can either protect from district office shenanigans or state shenanigans like my principal does, or they can force it down and teachers are right, check off the box because they're not willing to stand up for their teachers, which I don't understand, because when you don't have any teachers left, administrators are certified to teach. So who's going to be teaching, right? Administrators. And so, yeah, I am very intentional with that because it's a reality. And so many teachers say, if this would change, I'd come back in a heartbeat because they miss the kids. I talked about, and I know you're standing up for me to think this will be the last thing I say, and I will be around to answer any question that did get answered. I said earlier that I'm excited about the opportunity to be superintendent, but I'm heartbroken about leaving my kids. And so my principal and I were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I said, because adults are the work. I mean, that's why I work with kids. No offense to adults, but it's difficult. And I said, I'm not giving up my key and I'm not giving up my key card because I'm gonna need to sneak in here and be around kids so often to remind me of why I'm having to deal with adults. And so that's, that's what this is about. This is about us making it better for the kids in South Carolina, and providing a high quality education without parents having to pay for it. I mean, that's what we're about. And when we lift up, you said that you don't have kids in school. I don't have my own kids, but public education is a pillar of our society. I want to, when I drive down the road, I mean, I'd like the potholes to be fixed, but I would like to know that the bridges that I cross are not going to collapse because the people that designed and built them had a quality education. I'm going to be in a nursing home in 50 years. I want to make sure that the people who are taking care of me are qualified and ready to do that. So it's about helping our entire society. When we lift up our students, we help our society, and we do that through public education. Thank you all so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming out. I've got 2 educators in my family, and if I did not invite you to speak to my county party, my mother and my aunt probably would have disowned you. So I'm glad we were able to make this night happen. Thank you. You've been saying Coach Burgess, Mike Burgess, and the Riverwalk Young Democrats. I will never get that acronym. I used to work for a state agency that did all acronyms. So, and the last thing, you now, as me chair, you now own the highest turnout because the previous was another hot button issue in July with Planned Parenthood. But we had about 25 people online and there's about 30 people in here. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and y'all get everybody that you know. I tell people, don't take one person to the poll, take 10, because this lady needs to be our next superintendent of education. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.